Hey, it's Matt from Black Coal Woodworking. Welcome here. Today I'm making a rolling pin. Making this out of walnut. It's something I had on hand and I've always wanted to try. And I didn't know how hard it would actually be till I tried. I'm getting this set up to turn between centers because that's the only way it made sense to me. And I'm using a skew chisel. I thought this would be good practice for me. So what I'm doing is a peeling cut. It's a super efficient way to remove those pesky corners on that piece of wood. I'll show you that from another angle here shortly. In the meantime, I'm just trying to get this thing down to round so I know about how much material I've got to work with for the rest of the length of the piece. There we go. That's about it. Back to the peeling cut. You can see how I just sort of gently put my skew chisel on the wood there. And just that blade going underneath the wood slightly is enough to take off a whole bunch of wood very quickly. It doesn't leave the side that you cut very smooth at all, but the surface of the wood isn't bad except for all those ridges. Now it's time to practice my other skew skills. So I mentioned this being really hard to do for me. I don't know why, but it's actually harder than doing a bowl. I guess spindle work is more difficult because I think it requires more skill. And why? Well, when I make a bowl, it's a bowl. It's round, it's hard to see measurements, the thickness of the walls. You can use a measurement tool, yes, but if it varies, it's hard to tell. When you make a rolling pin and it has to be flat, that's where it gets more difficult. I've tried putting a ruler flat on here to see if it's flat, and that seems to help, but it's not perfect. This round, I'm trying to use my calipers to see if I set the dimension to something and slide it along. Does that work? We'll find out. So there's definitely some spots I need to bring down. This is what I did over and over and over again. Measure, cut, measure, cut. It took a while. One helpful tip I can leave here is to mark the spots that are high. So it's actually, half of it's fun because you can put a pencil mark on a spinning thing, but it does help you kind of narrow down where to trim. I finally got this section done. I did try to use a spindle gouge to see if this would work better. That was a big no very quickly. I just couldn't get that to work. So, back to the skew chisel. So, now that I'm done flattening this thing with the skew chisel, I moved on to sanding and worked my way from 60 grit all the way to 600 grit. To tackle the end of the piece, I'm using a 1/2 inch spindle gouge. I essentially want to chamfer the edge with a slight round to it and then have more of a flat end. This cut was fun to make because I managed to get it all in one pass. Oops, not this one. The next one. Far more fun. My goal was to get this in one pass so it's smoother. Thankfully, spindle gouges leave a really nice finish. On the side with the spur drive, I have to go in a little bit, otherwise I would end up with the marks in the end of my rolling pin, and I don't want that at all. I had to clear myself a little bit of room here so I could get down deeper on this end. To finish the ends, I take it over to the bandsaw and just snip off the nubs that are sticking out. It's actually quite a nice way to do it. It gives me the flat end I was hoping for, without having to try and fit that on the lathe and then risk having the rolling pin break off somehow. And finally, to finish the ends of this process, I used the disc sander that I made a few videos back to sand the ends really nice. Because it's end grain, I started with 120 grit and then ended up finishing with 400 or 600. The finishing process for me, especially when it's going to be touching food, is walnut oil. This is a super simple finish that's so easy to apply, and you can do this years from now, days from now, whenever you want to, and all you're going to do is make the finish look deeper and richer. It's going to easily blend into whatever was there before, so that's partly why I love this finish, is it just so easy to maintain. If my wife gets her hands on this thing, I'm gonna have to learn how to behave when I'm in the kitchen. Can't forget about the end grain. They're really thirsty, so gotta apply the oil a few times to those. I can already tell this thing's gonna be a lot of fun to use to smack some dough around. Thank you so much for checking out this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave me a comment, give it a thumbs up. If I've earned it, please consider subscribing. Thank you. See you again.